Alright guys, so this is a game I just finished recently, like just prior to recording this, and it was a ZVP on Core Hall. This is historically my worst matchup. I do really badly against late game Protoss. I'm usually not aggressive enough, because I don't scout well enough against Protoss. I've identified that as my big weakness in this matchup, is I don't scout well enough to know what they're doing, and they come at me with like mass carrier, mass void ray, and it's just far too late. I'm expecting some ground army, or I'll make a ton of anti-air, and they come at me with a billion immortals. So this is just my hardest matchup because the later the game goes, the worse I usually do. Um, so in this game, I try to improve my scouting, as well as try to improve my compositional choices, and not commit to anything that I know won't be effective for me. I want to make as little guesses as possible, um, and that's basically how I'm going to try and win this. This guy was platinum, so it was going to be a hard road. I knew that from the start, but I could assume he would go for less silly cheese mass carriers and more of a conventional game. So right about now, he has pylon blocked my natural here. So I've decided the way I'm going to go about this is try to go for a Hydra max timing. And what that is right around the 120, 140 supply marks, you get this massive explosion of supply that the Protoss generally won't be able to keep up with. Um, you just explode with Hydralisks, and you're supposed to hit at this timing when he's going for his third base that you can break through and overwhelm any army he has. Shouldn't have too many upgrades by that point, neither should you. It's just a massive rush of Hydralisks. I saw Life do it against Parting in the WCS BlizzCon finals, and it was super cool, and I've never really tried it before, so that's what I'm going to go for here. And he pylon blocked my natural, so I'm expecting some sort of aggression from him, because he knows that I've only got that one base economy. So I throw in the Roach Warren just to be safe. Make sure this isn't some cannon rush. Make sure he's not cheesing me. I've seen his probe here at the Watchtower with this Overlord, so I'm going to send my 2 Lings to take care of that probe. And my 2 Overlords here are going to try and go in for that scout that I know I'm not very good at. So that's my big goal this game, is to scout better and try to counter him better. I'm too late on my link speed here. I start that way too late. I need to start that earlier, but it ends up not biting me too poorly, or too badly, because he doesn't go for much aggression. So his nexus, his second nexus, is down. I haven't scouted that yet. This Overlord I'm going to send in later, but he paths his first Stalker over here to catch it, and it does. So this Overlord is going to go down, and there's nothing I can really do about it. I try to suicide it in here to get what information I can. I see he's chrono boosting this gateway, which is odd. Just not a normal thing. It's probably not even making anything. And he's got the Cyber Core so he can do warp-ins, but there's no massive amount of units. I see that the ramp is open, so he's not going for some one-base cheese. I'd still like to know how saturated the second base is, so I send in the second Overlord. I've got these Lings at the Watchtower after killing that probe to see if there's any aggression, but I'm not really expecting it at this point. And my second base is getting pretty saturated. The drone count is fine. I'm moving into lair tech. The Roach Warren was unnecessary. I'm going to make a few roaches with my extra larva right here, just because I want to be safe when taking my third, but I don't expect much aggression. Now moving this Overlord over, I see these mineral patches are empty, so I know he has this base, but he hasn't saturated it much. So he's going for either some higher tech, or he's going for some more aggressive play. So seeing that, I want to see exactly how saturated it is, and I want to find this tech. Now, with this information that I have, I'm trying to path into his base and see if he's going Stargate or Robo, but just the amount of stuff that I see here is leading me to believe Stargate. When I looked at his base, he already had the 1 gas, no gases here, and if he's going for a Robo opener, it's going to be an Immortal push, and that's just not too common. He's probably going for Phoenixes to snipe these Overlords and do drone harass. It's just the easier, safer catch-all build. And I've seen here, I sent one of these lings over to this watchtower. I've seen that he's placed a pylon to spot here, and this watchtower has seen the pylon spotting here, so he's got both entrances to his base spotted. Not going to be able to sneak any overlords in. I see the second gas, so I'm sure at this point that there's some sort of tech going on. I see the forge warping in, so I'm thinking, great, the tech is back here. I need to get this overlord to see this. He sees it, he's trying to snipe it, and I'm trying to just see this corner. I'm trying to see if there is the stargates. But unluckily, there's nothing there. So the scout has not paid off for me. I've got an overlord in the center of the map and an overlord moving over to scout the third base, but I just don't have the information I want. Now, unfortunately for me, looking at the vision, it was Stargate. He's got 2 Stargates. They're both pumping out Phoenixes. All of my overlords moving across the map are in bad position. They're going to get sniped out by these Phoenixes. I'm sending this ling over to break at this rock just in case this overlord doesn't get the scout with the speed upgrade. I want to see if that third is there and see if he's not diligent about this pylon. But unfortunately the Phoenixes see it. I do get the scout that there's no third, and that is probably the first successful scout I've gotten this game. So this overlord's going down. This overlord in the center of the map, I'm pulling back. I don't want that to die to the Phoenixes. My third base has come up, and right now, in my production tab, you see I need some queens. I've seen the Phoenixes. The roaches I've made for security are completely useless at this point. I want to try and get damage done with them, just to make sure that I get something out of them so they're not a complete waste of money before these Phoenixes find them and just start picking them up and getting rid of them. But I run them right out of the Phoenixes. So the Phoenixes all know where they are. They're going to come back, and these roaches are useless. He's setting down pylons here. The reason he's doing that is to overcharge them. If I do manage to break these rocks, he's got pylon overcharge 3 times, and these Phoenixes to pick things up, and I'm not going to risk going through here, especially after seeing the Mothership Core and Stalker. I know that he's prepared, so I want to run these away before the Phoenixes can catch them. At home, I've got my upgrade started for this Hydralisk timing I'm going for, but these Phoenixes are just going to chase these roaches all the way, so what I need to do is get these Spore Crawlers. I'm getting 2 at each base, because the number of Phoenixes he has is pretty massive. And what I'm likely going to do is start spamming some queens. You can see I have 3 on the way. I'm going to try and group those up, so if he tries to pick up the queens to snipe them, they can transfuse each other. Like right here, this queen's out in the open, I can't save that anymore. And I'm trying to get a Spore Crawler right here, just so the roaches can stand next to it, because he won't be able to pick up and kill the roaches. He's trying to walk around and snipe these overlords and kill as many queens and working drones as he can, and I'm trying to make sure I get these queens in a big group that he can't exactly walk over. Because if I have my queens in a giant group, they can transfuse, and the Phoenixes aren't much of a threat. I just need to be diligent about their placement. So my Hydralisk den actually finishes late. I should have teched into Hydras sooner, and that's a mistake I've made, but you can see by the production tab I am about to explode with Hydralisks. And Hydralisks are the counter to these Phoenix. This is a big moment for me where I have a massive advantage and I need to push it. Now the main difference that would make is in an army fight, like in a head-on fight, my Hydralisk will take out those Phoenixes, and he should, because he's gone Stargate, not have many immortals to deal with them. I still don't have any information from his base, and this is the biggest problem that I have versus Protoss. I need to be scouting earlier. So I sent these roaches in to break this wall down finally and see if I can get some vision, see if he has that third. I know his Mothership Core is there, so it's very likely that he does. And realizing that, I realized I am behind. If I don't get damage done with these Hydralisks, his economy is going to spiral out of control, and I am just going to get run over by the Protoss army. So right now, I'm trying to bait these Phoenixes in, and what I'm going to try and do is catch them with the Hydralisks. So they're chasing these roaches. I want this group of Hydralisks to bait the Phoenixes, and this group to catch them. So I split them here, and he notices my trap and runs immediately back and just pulls his Phoenixes here. I'm thinking, crap, what if he comes for my workers? So I'm worried about this little area here, and I figure I may as well press. I can't run back to my base by the time he would go for harass, so if I hit at these rocks, he's got to bring these Phoenixes home. And he does. I managed to break the rocks down. He sees it. He's got that spotter pylon still, and I'm moving my army through this choke, and this is scary for me. I've seen that he's got this army in position, these pylons, some immortals. He's got enough immortals. This means 2 things. One, he's got that third base. We're on the same economy, and I am behind. And that is very not good for me. The Protoss actually might even have more workers than me at this point, and if you're in a position where you're in the same economy as a Protoss as a Zerg, you're just going to lose, that's it. And I've seen his immortal count, so although I don't know what's here, it's a safe assumption that he has these robo facilities. And he's seen my massive Hydralisk count, so he's just going to spam Immortals and even get Disruptors, because that is the biggest counter you could possibly have. These Phoenixes are just to keep me in my base for as long as possible while he masses up these robo units, and then eventually he'll just be able to take me, and there's nothing I'll be able to do about it. Now my answer to this, luckily I got to pick up a few free Phoenixes there, is to go into a Lurker Den. Lurkers counter the Immortals if I'm able to position them well enough, and it's going to be harder for him to kill with the Disruptors. I'm also getting my macro hatchery and trying to press my upgrade advantage here. If I can get my upgrades before him, this army will be much more cost efficient. The problem with Hydralisks versus Immortals and Disruptors is they are the opposite of cost efficient. Hydras do a ton of damage, but they're so squishy. They're not going to be able to kill the Immortals in a straight up fight, and they die to one Disruptor ball. So this is looking bad for me. Economically, I need to get this lead on the Protoss, so I throw this base down in desperation, but at this point it's kind of too late. His third base has been online for longer. I'm in trouble. I've spent all my money on this army I can't do anything with. This is very dangerous for me, so I break down this rock and take this base, and I'm trying to morph these Lurkers here to try and hold this area. Now this area is where the rest of the game will basically play out. If I lose this area and this base, the game is basically over. And if he gets this base and secures this area, the game is basically over for me. Now the Lurkers, this is my actual first time using them. They're like siege tanks for Zerg, except less mobile, but they do probably, in a choke point, probably more damage. So my big goal here, the big plan, is to use these Hydralisks to snipe any air units that try to push onto these Lurkers, and then use these Lurkers to do as much damage to the Immortals as I can. I want to funnel him into these Lurkers in every engage, and I split my units here so that the Disruptor balls come down, they won't take too much damage. Luckily he goes for the bait group, and I have all of my army in position now, so he's going to try and break them. But my micro is awful. This is my first time using this army, and I am not good at it, so I take a massive Disruptor hit, and that puts me behind for the first time. So I'm scared at this point of what's going to happen if I leave my army down there. I know my micro is not very good, so I'm expecting Disruptor balls to come out non-stop and just start wrecking my Lurkers. I'm morphing these Overseers here. I want to have stealth detection so I can see if any observers are flying over my army, because they're the way that he will be able to see my Lurkers. I'm going to set my Lurkers up here so that if he ever tries to come up this ramp, everything will die. I see his army moving across with these overlords, so I pull them back, and at this point it basically becomes I need to turtle until I have my 3/3 upgrades, my hive, and enough Lurkers to be able to break this ramp. Now for him, all he's got to do is get Robo-Bay units. He's maxed out, which I didn't know, but it was a safe assumption. So he's actually wasting supply on these Zealots, I feel. He could have probably tacked into even more Immortals or something. Zealots aren't the worst choice, but I just don't feel like they're doing much for him, especially not these Stalkers. But I can't ever get down this ramp, and it would be incredibly cost inefficient for him to run up into these Lurkers. So we're at almost a stalemate here, where he needs to come up with some answer to break this ramp, and I need to come up with some answer to do the same thing. Here I make the decision to move down the ramp with my Hydras and engage, but that ramp just screws my Hydralisks so hard. The Storm, the Disruptor, I can't ever break it, and I lose a sizable amount of those Hydralisks before realizing I need to get these Lurkers forward. I'm not doing any damage here in these engagements. Behind all this, I've been struggling for money, and these bad trades where I don't know how to split are making it even harder. This engage goes incredibly poorly for me. He has a great concave. My Lurkers aren't even in the fight for the majority of it, and he manages to break everything I have. I'm as fast as I can remaxing on these Hydralisks. The second that shot went off, I'm producing them. It is a race right here to make sure I don't lose this hatchery. And then I just realize I'm running out of minerals at home. I'm running out of gas at home. this base isn't doing enough for me. I'm going to need to secure this base. So I'm only making lings here because I need the supply. What their job is going to be is distraction. That's going to be bait. While I build up this lurker count again, because without these lurkers I stand absolutely no chance. These hydras are going to get wrecked. So these lings are going to come over here to this rock and try to harass and break into his base, get some probe kills, maybe find out what this tech is, do some scouting. That's just the thought process behind this. They're not for the actual army. They're not for an actual engage. They're just kind of utility. And behind that, that's when I'm going to try to take this base. Now, at the top of this ramp, I've remade a few lurkers. I'm putting some spore crawlers here, and the main reason for the spore crawlers is because I had a few drones not doing anything, and there's no reason for me to have the spores in this base anymore. If phoenixes come in or something to kill it, I'm not losing much. So I may as well bring them over to where my army is to help out the hydralisks and to protect the actual workers that I need. My injects have been fine this whole game, so I have so much larva that I actually just cannot use because I don't have the money to spend it or the supply. I'm maxed out on these hydras and lings, and the lings managed to break through, but his army is there to catch it, and I seize this opportunity. I'm like, wow, he moved his whole army. I need to get up this ramp. But because I don't have the scouting information, I'm not sure what's there. Now I walk over an oracle trap here and start moving up, see these zealots and think, crap, maybe I misjudged and his army's here, that was just a small force, and I move back. Now in hindsight, for some reason this base didn't build, by the way, and I'm trying to morph this into an overseer to see if there's an invisible unit blocking it, but I think it was just a bug of some kind, so my drones are doing nothing, and I don't have that base yet. But in hindsight, I should have definitely pushed this ramp. Those zealots were not enough to deal with me. I should have 100% taken a position up there that would have let me wait for his army with these lurkers and just be in a massively aggressive position. I would have been so much better off, but I didn't do that. And that's a weakness for me. I need to be getting that scouting off. These overseers could have been flying around that base a lot sooner, but they weren't. He gets a tag on my army here, which is very problematic for me because it lets him see these lurkers burrowed. So I'm not going to try and take any engages while he has that tag on me. And I do manage to get this base up, but as I do that, he's noticed these drones. I think he has a pylon here, a warp prism. So he warps in a ton of zealots right as I'm transferring all these drones over. And the zealots are going to come in and kill this base. And that's a lot of supply for him. And also a problem for me because my economy is just not doing so well right now. The tag wears off and I morph a bunch more lurkers. And I see him laying traps out here, so I'm going to use these lings to detonate the traps so that they don't catch my main army. And his zealots are wrecking this base. And as I move out to try and defend it, his army catches mine. Now I need to burrow these lurkers in a position where they're helpful, but at the same time they're being clogged up by all these hydras, so I take a position at the top of the ramp. And here's where I make another mistake. These lurkers are just too far back. They don't have a way to support these hydralisks when I go down the ramp. So I move down the ramp here, and that's just right into a storm, get eaten up by the Archons. It's really showing that I don't know how to use this army. I need to be putting these lurkers in positions where they're helpful, like down this ramp. And it's right about now that I realize that, so I start to bring them down, and he's moved his army back just enough, I think he was microing the zealots, that he doesn't see it. So I'm able to get my whole army down this ramp. And that's the first time I've been able to take this aggressive location. And now that I've actually got this split lurker army right here, there's no way he can actually come back. So now that I've secured this spot, I'm off in a good place. Luckily for me here, I'm maxing out on some more hydralisks when these zealots come breaking through the rock and into my main. So I have these queens here, and they'll be able to transfuse this hatch. It's never going down. My upgrades 3-3 are going to finish, and here's the hydras that I was making. And they save this base pretty easily. I overreacted a little by bringing a lot more hydras back than I needed to, but his army seizes this opportunity to jump on my lurker field. Now this actually is fantastic for me. He tries to walk up this fucking ramp and just gets melted, absolutely destroyed by these lurkers. And this looks like a good trade for him because he kills all these lurkers, but it is absolutely not. He loses all of his army. The only thing left are these immortals, loses the mothership core, and now I've taken this huge supply lead. I'm immediately remaxing on army. I'm going to move these lurkers forward now that I can do this and start shelling at these pylons. My overseers are getting me vision, and it's at this point where the control has made all the difference. Me bringing those lurkers back here And him failing to micro against them right here was literally the difference between me losing and winning this game. So I activate a few traps at the top of the ramp with these Hydras, split decently actually against the Disruptors for the very first time. And at this point, when I have these Lurkers morphed, it's just a matter of control. It's just a matter of if I can position them properly or if he can break them properly, and that'll decide this whole game. For him, I don't think Zealots were a wise choice. I think he should have gone for more Disruptors here, but he moves them too close to the army, and he gets a fantastic shot off against my Hydras, but it's too little too late. The Lurkers are on the ramp right now, and his army can't get in position to stop me from moving up. I'm able to kill all of these High Templars without a single storm going off, get the Lurkers even further up the ramp, and I think at this point the game is basically over. He can't mine from this base. There's no other mining bases for him to take except this one, which he simply hasn't tried to. It's not viable for him at this point. He's got way too much probe, oversaturation that's not doing anything for him, and I'm moving in. And although he has the money to be making units, I think he realizes it's over at this point. My Lurkers are too entrenched in his base, so if he ever tries to take this base, I'm just going to move all the way over the map with these Lurkers, and at this point there's no stopping the train. I'll be able to push them forward like this every time I fight, and he just can't ever engage on my Hydralisks. And so that's really what it came down to. My composition was... They're kind of counters to each other. His Disruptor Archon Immortal versus my Lurker Hydra. It's all about control, and at the end of the day, I managed to figure out how to use the army just in time to be able to save this game. So that's really what the importance of the scouting was. I didn't see the double Stargate opener, and I made those useless roaches. I didn't see the double Robo Bay, and I got my Lurkers way too late. But that control, specifically here, catching these traps with my Lings, moving the Lurkers out here, getting the Lurkers in that split position when my whole army was away, and him blending his against them. It's little moments like that where I was in a terrible position for the majority of this game, but he basically gifted me the win by having bad control. And so even though his macro was fantastic, and he was ahead of me in economy for a large portion, he wasn't able to convert that into the proper army composition. He wasn't able to control the army he had. And that's really what's going to be a big difference between the lower and higher leagues. And that's honestly a problem I need to fix with my Lurker control, as we saw in my Hydralisks just not splitting at all against those Disruptors. So that'll be a fun thing to get practicing, I suppose. But the most important thing is to identify your own issues. I've identified that I need to scout better. I've identified that I need to position my Lurkers better, and I do. And that's really what I wanted to take away from all of this.